Why is it of such interest to you? Like you mentioned that this is a real area of focus and expertise of yours. There's so much,
you said expertise. I said interest.
you have a wall of books here. I'm sure the Gemara and everything, and you've read it all. Why is critiquing Zionism so important to you?
So let me, after I tell you why they say anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism, I'll answer that. And the truth of the matter is, there's one or two principles about Zionism that if you understand those principles, you'll understand a lot about what the Zionists do. There is a problem where people look at Zionism and anti-Zionism in terms of the conflict with the Palestinians. That's not really the most helpful way to understand the issue of Zionism and anti-Zionism. Why? Because, for example, let's assume that Israel and the Palestinians work out a two-state solution. And let's assume that the Palestinians are happy. Let's assume that the Palestinians get 90% of the land and Israel is left with 10% of the land in the Negev desert. But Israel's happy.
I wouldn't be happy with that.
Okay. Theoretical.
Sure.
And let's say the Palestinians are happy and everybody's happy. Are the anti-Zionists now happy? Sure. I'm not happy because Zionism didn't change. There's an ideology called Zionism that existed independent and before there was any conflict with Palestinians. It wasn't even inevitable that there would be a conflict because remember, the Zionists had ideas about Uganda, Kenya today. They had other ideas. There were even Zionists that didn't think they need a state altogether, right? The cultural Zionists. There were all sorts of things. But Zionism is an ideology, which it does, the way Zionism was implemented, the Palestinians were in the way. But Zionism exists as an ideology, and that ideology is directly, well, put it this way. It's incompatible and with Judaism, and not only incompatible, it's really designed as a poison for Judaism, to destroy Judaism.
By the way, so we're in Far Rockaway right now. There's very religious Jewish communities around here in the 5 towns. Lots of Orthodox Jews, most of whom, if I had to guess, strongly support Israel. How does that work for you? You live here, you're part of these communities. Like, tell me, how does that work?
First of all, what do you mean support Israel? You think I don't support Israel? You think I want Israel to be bombed?
Let me ask you, do you support Israel?
What do you mean by support Israel? And see, this is part of the ambiguity. Here's what Zionists do. 90% of Jews. 90% of Jews are Zionists.
What do you mean by Zionist, by the way? What do you mean by Zionist? So, by some definitions of Zionist, you're a Zionist because you support Israel.
And that's what Zionists want when they say 90% of Jews are Zionists. When you say I support Israel, means
the labels. Let people. There's a lot of Reform or even secular Jews in this country who call themselves Zionists, and what they mean by Zionist, if you ask them, and I have, is they'll say, "Oh, I support Israel. I believe in Israel."
But you didn't ask them what it means to support Israel. Do you mean support Israel's bombing Gaza or support Israel receiving money for an Iron Dome?
And they have a spectrum of answers. And some people, the more liberal, left-leaning people, will say, I really care about Israel's survival, and I care about the Palestinians, and I want the war to end, and I want them to get the hostages back, and I hate Hamas. I mean, there's nuance to this, but there are lots of people that I know that call themselves Zionists, and what they mean by that is that they care about the prosperity of Israel, not at the expense of death and destruction for everyone else. But there's a spectrum to which, I think the term Zionism originally meant a home for the Jews.
No.
No?
No.
Do you think when Herzl was writing about Zionism, he was like, let me find a way to maximize death and destruction of all people? He's saying, no, let's find a home for the Jews.
You just made a binary, you just made a Boolean. It's either a home for the Jews or maximize destruction. The answer is C, none of the above. That's not what Zionism is.
To have a home for the Jews that required maybe some level of explosion, I don't know what was...
No, nothing to do with explosions. Nothing. First of all, there was a disagreement amongst the original Zionists whether the Arabs would, which is what they called the Palestinians and the Jews did, accept them with open arms. There are those who believe that.
I'm just saying there's
Ben-Gurion
Zionists
is
and
one
there's
of them.
people who I self-identify as Zionists, and what they mean by Zionism is that they support Israel.
Meaning, what do you mean support
Meaning,
Israel?
and that has a spectrum of views. Some people, it's a very extreme view, and some people, they're just saying, look, I care about the prosperity of Israel,
And the lives of the Jews in it.
and the lives of the Jews in it, and the lives of the people in the surrounding countries, and therefore I mean,
So
I guess
what does his Zionism mean?
I think it's, I think it means different things to different people. Frankly,
Yeah. So therefore, when somebody tells you, and I don't know if they told this to you, but I've heard this 1,000 times, and so many people I know, that 90% of Jews are Zionists. That doesn't mean anything, because it means so many different things to different people. So let's take the extremes, okay?
Yeah.
Right, because usually right after they say 90% of Jews are Zionists, they say, well, 90% of Jews support Israel. Wait, hold on. Zionists and support Israel may be two different things, but that's what they say. And support Israel means what? Support Israel, you want Israel to bomb Gaza and Lebanon and Syria and wipe every carpet bomb people? Or does it mean, I think Israel should get money for the Iron Dome, so Jerusalem shouldn't be blown up by missiles?
What do you believe?
Hold on.
Where do you stand on this?
Hold.
Yeah.
So when you hear X percentage of Jews are Zionists, I agree with you, but based on what you said, it is a completely meaningless statement.
So I think some people might say that meaninglessly. Some people might say it in an anti-Semitic way, because they might, if someone says 90% of Jews are, Zionist in the utmost fashion, then I would
not utmost. They just say that statement, and two groups of people say that: anti-Semites and Zionists. They both say. The Zionists say it in order to delegitimize Judaism by pretending it's Zionism, and the Zionists say it in order to legitimize Zionism by pretending it's Judaism. But both the anti-Semites and the Zionists want everybody to believe that Zionism is Judaism. I once had a video after a protest we made, I think it was about 10 years ago. It was about 10 years ago in Manhattan, Foley Square, against the Israeli government trying to draft the ultra-Orthodox Jews into the army. I made a video about it. This video now has a couple million views. Then at the point that it had, I think, 1 million, David Duke, I think we can all agree he's an anti-Semite, wrote an article about me and the video. Basically, he said, don't believe Rabbi Shapiro that he's not really an anti-Zionist. He doesn't want the dismantling of Israel. He doesn't call for the dismantling of the settlements. He just wants his Jewish supremacist ultra-Orthodox Jews not to have to serve in the army. The anti-Semites, again, not a 100% quote, but that's what he said. That was the gist. The anti-Semites want everybody to think Jews are Zionists. Zionists want people to think Jews are Zionists. They have a common cause over there, which should tell you something about whether it's beneficial or not for Jews to be Zionists. Okay, so right away you asked me why I would be against Zionism. So first thing, it's a hint. There's a little hint over here. If David Duke and the anti-Semites are all running around saying, yes, the Jews are Zionists, the Jews are Zionists, the odds are there's something there that should motivate the Jews not to be Zionists. But we'll get there. There's an ideology called Zionism. That's what I was speaking about before. There's an ideology called Zionism. In order to understand a lot of what Israel does, the way they act, what motivates them, you need to understand what Zionism is. When you say it means a lot of things to a lot of people, that's true. But there's something under the hood that, whether you realize that's Zionism or not, is driving Israel's actions. It's an ideology that it's a very, very profound and complex ideology, and you don't want to call it Zionism, don't, but that's what it is.